Today I'm sharing 10 spectacular ways to create a high-end Christmas garland. We're going to be decorating several mantelscapes, signs, even mirrors. So let's get started with number 1. Above my pillows on my headboard, I thought that a garland would be a beautiful accent. Now, I have a hard time finding greenery that is gold, so hey, if you can't find it, let's just make it, right? So I went to Michael's and I found 2 garlands of eucalyptus, and luckily they were 40% off. I purchased 2 and it was around $26. So what I'm going to do with my garland is I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to spray paint them gold. I'm using a gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. I sprayed each of the leaves in the spray paint, held up the garland, got inside and underneath all of the leaves. I did 1 coat of spray paint on both of the garlands, and then I let it dry for 20 minutes. I came back. This time I put on a glove and I separated the leaves individually, spray painted them to make sure that each leaf was completely covered in the gold spray paint. Once everything was covered, I let it dry for 2 hours. Now, to create the swags on each of my mirrors, what I did was I took one of the garlands, I folded it in half, and then I cut it. So I have 2 shorter garlands. Then I took a piece of twine and I wrapped it around each end of the garland and tied it to my mirror. On the garland in the center, I just left it whole. I tied each end of my garland to the headboard with that twine and then pulled it up in the center. Again, I used that twine to tie it to the center of the headboard. And then on each side of my headboard, I added some beautiful teardrops that are filled with poinsettias and magnolia leaves and some pine garlands, along with some beautiful gold and white ribbons and a snowflake. Not only do these teardrop swags add to the seasonal feeling of this room, but it also covers up where I tied the twine to the bed, so you'll never know what's behind there. Next, we're going to be creating a candy garland, and we are going to be making them with Dollar Tree baseballs. I went down the toy aisle and I found these little bags of 3 baseballs. So I purchased a few of them. These are going to be perfect for our candy. Because we are making a garland, I'm going to need to make some holes in these baseballs so I can string them up later. So I got my drill and I drilled some holes on opposite sides of our baseball. To hold my baseballs in place while I paint them, I got a wooden skewer, I snapped it in half, and I poked the wooden skewer through the baseball. I also had a large block of styrofoam so I could press that wooden skewer into the foam and it would hold it upright while I painted it. Now we are going to be painting this in our same 3 craft paints. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate segments. I'm going to paint one segment a saturated color and then leave the other one white. Once I had the segments painted, I added that extra fine glitter. I sprinkled that over the painted segments just to give it a little extra Christmas sparkle. Now, if I were to do this again, I would have done a second coat of paint on these segments because they did end up to be a little lighter than I wanted. Now that everything is painted and has glitter on it, we are going to let it dry for 3 hours. Now that our first candy is created, let's move on to our second. We are going to make these candies out of some pool noodles. I got a pool noodle and a very sharp knife. I cut 23-inch long segments from this pool noodle. I have some really colorful striped wrapping paper that I purchased at Target a few years ago, and this is going to be perfect for my color scheme. So what I did was I just cut segments of this wrapping paper. I got my pool noodle, I wrapped the wrapping paper around the pool noodle, and then I just taped it together. So I just continued this process with my 23-inch segments of pool noodle. Now it's time to assemble our garland. Again, we're going to be using the fishing line. I love using this because it can handle a little bit of weight and you can't see the mechanics of how it's being strung together. I absolutely love fishing line. So what I did was I got a needle, a long needle, but guess what? The needle was not long enough. So I had to improvise. I took a pin and I taped that to the end of my needle, which created a long enough needle to put through the baseball. So I put the fishing line through the eye of the needle, and then I threaded the needle through the pool noodle and then through the baseball, through the pool needle, through the baseball. You get the drill, until we had our entire garland strung on this fishing line. The reason why I strung everything on the fishing line first before I put my cellophane on, which is what we're going to be doing in just a minute, was because you can wrap the cellophane around the fishing line, but you can't string the fishing line through the cellophane. It would be a lot harder to do it that way. So for ease, we are going to be doing it in this order. So now that I have everything strung up, I'm going to take some cellophane. I'm going to wrap it around my pool noodle candies, and then I'm going to tie the ends with some white ribbon. Once these candies were done, I did the same thing with my baseball candies. I just wrapped them in cellophane, and this time I'm using some pink sparkle ribbon that I got at the Dollar Tree. This is so cute, and it goes with all of the other sparkly, glittery things that we have. Now that everything is wrapped in the cellophane, we have a 20-foot long garland. This thing is huge. And we made it out of 18 baseballs and 1 pool noodle. So if you're looking for something that's dramatic, this is a great piece to create because it was really affordable, but gosh, we are getting a huge bang for our buck with this. It looks like a candy explosion. I am going to do an asymmetrical garland over this giant mirror. I absolutely love this mirror. We are going to theme it into Christmas. We're going to start with a very thick garland, and we are going to drape it across this mirror. So I took my thick pre-lit garland and I added a screw to the wall. I don't typically do this. I like to use command hooks, but this garland is so big, I do not want it falling off midway through the season. So we're gonna put some screws in the wall, one on either side of our mirror, and we'll just have to putty it up and paint over when Christmas is over, but that's okay. That's an easy fix. So what we're gonna do is we're going to attach one end of our garland to the screw on one side of the mirror, and then I'm going to drape it down ever so slightly and then put the other side, which is about halfway through the garland, on the other screw that's on the other side of the mirror. And then I'm going to let this garland drape down almost to tabletop height. Now that our garland is securely in place, we are going to add some bows. Now, as you know from our video last week, our accent color this year is sage. We're doing a sage, white, and gold. So I took those 3 colors and I created a bow, and I put it on either side of the garland at the top where it was connected to the wall. And then I put some beautiful poinsettias right above those bows. At this point, I added all kinds of greenery. I put some gold magnolia leaves, some other gold leaves, frosted leaves, and some lamb's ear. Do you remember the garland that we made last week on our fireplace mantle? Well, we are taking those same leaves and berries and we're adding them to this garland. That way they tie together. This is really important, especially because these elements are in the same room. After all the greenery was in place, I added all kinds of ornaments. I have some round ornaments, some snowflake ornaments, some reindeer ornaments. I think my favorite garland embellishment are these gold gems. I purchased these at Target and I placed these around the garland, especially at the top, so they could hang down and add an extra element of sparkle. A garland like this is a beautiful way to highlight a mirror, because you're drawing attention to an already beautiful piece You're simply embellishing it to make an existing piece a statement piece. Speaking of garland, let's talk about how I put mine together. My personal preference is a big, thick, beefy garland. The thicker the better. So I took 2 medium-sized garlands and I intertwined them together to get one lush garland. I also took 3 strings of Christmas lights. Yes, 3. I wanted it to shine bright. And I added those around the garland as well. To secure my garland to my mantle, I took some floral wire and I wrapped it around the garland and left a little loop at the top, and then I used 3 command hooks, 1 on each side and then 1 in the center, and then I hooked that wire from the garland onto the command hook to keep it securely onto the mantle. I started out weaving some gold mesh ribbon around the garland. I simply wrapped it around. Next, I got a copper ribbon and wrapped that around the garland as well. I added some large poinsettias to the top, sides, and the center. I also added in some large feather ornaments that I made several years ago. I wanted to add some hanging elements to my garland, and as you saw before in my foyer table, I used some terrariums and some of those gold gems. I had some leftover terrariums and I knew that they would be perfect for this particular mantle design. Inside of my terrarium, I decided to add some snow. I used some Dollar Tree bath salts. I love how this resembles coarse snow, plus it smells really good. Mine smells like vanilla, so not only does it look good, but it smells good. I put a candle in the center of the snow. It's a battery operated candle. Again, it will come on by itself every single night, so I don't have to turn it on. And then to hang them, I got some fishing line. I threaded the fishing line through the top circle in the terrarium and then tied it into several knots. And on the opposite end, it is a little heavier, so I needed to secure it to the mantle really well. So I tied it to the command hooks that were on the back. That way it can hang and I don't worry about it falling off because it's too heavy. The second element is going to be some more of those gold gems that I got at Target. Again, I took that fishing line and I poked it through the hole in the top of the gem, tied it into a knot, and then on the opposite end, I tied the fishing line around an ornament hook. That way I can hang it at any location on my garland. At this point, I just began adding ornaments and more poinsettias and some pine cones, some pretty reflective crystals, and some gold berries. I am in love with the way that this garland turned out. It's such a statement piece in this room. The DIYs add a classy touch while keeping the costs down. One of my favorite things to do is to turn the lights off at night, sit on the couch, and admire the glow. I think it's more impressive with the lights dimmed. The sparkles from the individual pieces shine, and the flicker from the candles add movement and make this piece come alive. To emphasize that grand feeling, we are going to start off at the tippity top of this mirror, and we're going to make a garland and drape it over the top. I began by placing some command hooks above the mirror, 1 on either corner of the mirror. Next, I got a pine garland and I weaved a string of Christmas lights through the garland. And then I got some floral wire and I cut some segments off and I put the floral wire at the end of one part of the garland and about 1/3 of the way from one of the ends. I wrapped that wire around the garland and then I hung it on the command hooks. So I took the end of the gold beaded garland and I wrapped a pine branch around the end. I made a small dip in the garland and then attached it back up to the pine garland about 2/3 of the way across the top garland. I made a second dip and attached it to the top corner. I created several rows of beaded garland dips to create a luxurious, sparkly design. Just like in my fireplace garland, I'm going to be creating some bows to add in the places that everything is connected, because we don't want to see where things are connected, so we can hide them through placing these bows over the top. So I created these bows and I placed them right where the gold beaded garland connects to the pine garland. Then I added a variety of poinsettias, some gold berries, gold and crystal gems, and hung them by the fishing line so they look like they're floating. And then, of course, a variety of ornaments. I can't even tell you how much I love this garland. It is so striking. It draws your eye upward and it makes this foyer space feel grand. It's time to move on and decorate our fireplace. Now, this is one of my favorite places to decorate every single year, and every single year I come up with a different design for the garland. Now, believe it or not, I have never hung stockings from my fireplace mantle. Shocking, right? The reason is because I always do like an elaborate garland and I just don't have space for the stockings. This year I am putting stockings on my fireplace, and the ones that I found were actually from Ross, and they were only $5.99 a piece. They have those pearls on them, which is perfect. It coordinates so beautifully with my tree skirt and all the other pearl elements that we're going to be adding to our decorating. So because I'm hanging my stockings this year, I'm keeping my garland pretty tight to the top. So I took my garland that had already been strung with lights and I put it just over the top of my mantle. Now, on my mantle, I have screws on either side. Years ago, I added some screws because my garlands are so heavy that the command hooks just wouldn't keep it up. So I had to add some screws. So I've got one on either side, and in the center, I have a command hook just to kind of keep everything from falling over in the center. It doesn't carry a whole lot of weight. So I got my garland up, and then I took some beautiful lamb's ear, some gold magnolia leaves, and some other gold leaves, and I'm going to just put them sporadically throughout this garland. The lamb's ear adds that beautiful sage color. Now, because our tree is flocked, I wanted to add some flocked pieces to my garland. Last year, we made some flocked pieces to go in our topiary trees, and so I had those extra flocked pieces from last year, and so I just added those to my garland as well to brighten it up a little bit more and to tie in those flocked elements. Now that all of our botanicals are in place, we are going to add these beautiful ribbons, the same ribbons that we've been using in all of our spaces throughout the room. So I just took that white ribbon, the sage ribbon, and the snowflake ribbon. I put them together and created a bow, and then I attached them on either end of my garland. Next, I added some white poinsettias and some gold poinsettias, and then a large frosted flower in the center. And then I just went to town and added all kinds of ornaments. I added some pearl studded ornaments, gold ornaments, satin round ornaments, snowflake ornaments, and then on either side I added a large white tassel. The final touch is to add some more of those gold berries sporadically throughout the garland. This is a great filler. These berries will fill in any vacant spaces. And now we are completed with our gorgeous Christmas garland. I love the way it looks. I love that it is up high so that it can highlight those stockings that are hanging down. Now, my daughter did ask me, when Santa comes down the chimney, what are we gonna do when the stockings are in the way? And I said, well, don't worry about that. I'll tell our elf on the shelf flower to move those out of the way before Santa comes down the chimney. That way he can make his entrance into the room very easy. One other tip I'm gonna give you is how I hid my cord, my electrical cord, because you don't wanna see any of that. So what I did was I got some command hooks, some smaller ones, and I just placed my electrical cord right inside of those command hooks. I took it over to the wall and then I let it drop down behind my drapes so you can't really see the electrical cord. Now on top of my mantle, I'm going to be adding some large gold mercury glass candlesticks, but I didn't want to leave them plain, so I'm going to add some bows, and to the bows, I'm going to add the same frosted leaves and gold berries to the center. And then in the middle part right here, I've got some large cone Christmas trees. They're white and they have this pretty sparkly, shimmery top that looks like they're flocked with snow. These trees add a lovely winter element to my fireplace mantle. And now we're finished with our mantle decorations. I love how classy this looks. It's timeless, it's elegant, and I'm overjoyed with the color scheme. We have the same color scheme on our shelves, on our mantle, on our tree. And they tie together because we use the same elements in each one of these areas. We have the same ribbons. We incorporated the same greenery, the same ornaments, the pearls and the sparkly snowflakes. And by doing this, it ties each of these spaces together. One of my favorite places to decorate at Christmas time is the mantle. It's that time of year where we can go all out and make this area a major focal point. The first thing that we're gonna need, of course, is a garland. What I like to do with my garlands is I take two of them and I intertwine them together to make them look really full and lush. I also like to add a lot of lights to my garlands. The more lights, the better. So the first thing that I needed to do was add some command hooks. I put one on either side of my mantelscape, and then I also got some floral wire and I wired it around the garland on either end so that I could attach the garland to the command hook. You do not want your garland falling off mid-season, so make sure that you get those garlands securely in place. I draped my garlands so there was a slight dip in the center and a long billowing end on the right-hand side. I have collected quite a few strands of gold beads over the course of several years, so I'm just using beads that I already have. Now, I did go to Target the other day and I saw that they had some gold beaded garlands there. They were by the ornaments, so if you are looking for some, I have seen them there. What I did was I took my large beaded gold garland first. I attached it to the pine garland simply by weaving those pine branches around the garland. This is great. You don't have to add any additional wire because the garland is already wired. So I attached it to the garland and then I simply just draped it so it was below the pine garland. I made one dip and then brought it up about 2/3 of the way across the garland and then made a second dip and brought it up to the top corner. I continued this design with my smaller beaded garlands. I simply mimicked the shape of the previous laid garland. Again, I just used those pine branches to hold the garlands in place. I added several strands of garland to create this draped design. I love that it looks like an elegant layered necklace. Can't you see something like this draped across the neck of an elegant lady? It's just very Gatsby-esque to me, and I just love the way that it looks. Now that my garlands are hung, we have 3 distinct areas where everything was attached. Now, I don't want to look at where things are attached, so we're just gonna hide it. And we're gonna do it with some bows. I created some bows out of some thick white satin ribbon and then also some sparkly gold ribbon. I tied them into a bow and I placed these bows in the areas where the gold beaded garlands were connected to the pine garland. Next, I took one of these white snowflake ornaments and I took a thinner piece of satin ribbon and I threaded it through the ornament, and then I tied it around the bow. Again, I'm leaving long tails all throughout my decor. I love the way the long tails look on the ribbon. It's just so elegant. Next, I took some gold and white poinsettias and I placed those above the ribbons. The poinsettias help to draw your eye to these specific areas, and it also helps cover up all the areas where everything is connected. Next, I took some white and gold snowflake ornaments and I scattered those throughout the garland. Then I placed several varieties of ornaments throughout the garland. I have some sparkly ornaments, some shiny, some matte, some glittery ornaments, all kinds. The bigger the variety, the better. In order to enhance the length of this side of the garland, I decided to add some tassels. These beautiful tassels add length to the side. It drapes so beautifully down this garland, and it's an unexpected element. Last year, I created this Christmas countdown clock and it immediately became one of my all-time favorite pieces for Christmas. My little ones love moving the hand every morning. It's just a treasure. Another one of those repeating elements that I have used in my Christmas decorations this year are asymmetrical garland designs. So of course it would only make sense that I did it on this as well. I first placed a pine garland that had some twinkle lights inside, and then I got my gold beaded garland. I started at the far corner. I attached the end of the gold garland to the pine garland by simply taking a pine branch and wrapping it around the gold beaded garland. I made a dip and went about 2/3 of the way across the top. I attached it to the pine garland and then made another dip and attached it to the far left corner by wrapping another pine branch around it. Then I went back the other way and made a shallower dip to go above the first dip. I attached everything together by simply using the pine branches that were on the pine garland. To cover up the places where everything is attached, I'm again going to be using some bows. I created some bows and I attached them to the garland with the pine branches right where the gold beaded garland was attached to the pine garland. Then I added some poinsettias, gold berries, a variety of ornaments, some crystals hanging from fishing line, and 2 beautiful tassels. Now that our floral arrangement is complete, we are going to move on and create a garland that's going to frame this mirror. A swag like this can really highlight a special framed piece of artwork, or like me, we're going to highlight this mirror. Again, all we're doing is taking something that's around the house that's probably already on your wall, like an oil painting or something, and we're just gonna highlight it and theme it in a Christmas style. So to create my garland, I first purchased a 9-foot garland at Walmart and it was only $2.76. That is a good price. I fluffed up the branches and then I folded the garland in half to make it thicker and fuller. Before we add all of our decorative elements, we're going to hang it on the mirror. So the first element that we're going to add to our garland is a custom ribbon. I purchased some ribbon at Michael's. It's plain, and I wanted to embellish it, so we're gonna do it with a Cricut iron-on detail. And then I took my iron decal, I placed it in the center of the ribbon with the protective coating facing up. I heated up my Easy Press to 330 degrees and I set the timer for 30 seconds. I placed the Easy Press over the top of my vinyl and started the countdown by hitting that green C button. Once the timer had run down, I removed the Easy Press from the ribbon and then I peeled away the plastic covering over the top of the vinyl. Then I repeated the process with the remaining 5 segments. Ribbon can be so expensive, especially if you're getting one with a beautiful detail on it. So by making this ourselves, we saved ourselves some money and we got a custom ribbon. You could also add some Christmas trees or some reindeer or some words like Merry Christmas or Joy. There's so many things that you could do to create a holiday themed ribbon. So at this point, I just took my ribbon and I wrapped it around my garland. We added a beautiful element of sophistication to an otherwise plain ribbon. The next element that we're going to add to our garland is a wood beaded garland. So we're gonna add a garland to a garland. So I purchased this garland at Ross and it was $7.99. What I wanted to change about this garland was the natural color of the beads, and also there were like these little pillowy Christmas trees on there. They were stuffed, they were fabric, I just cut them off. I figured I can give them to my daughter and she will get to color on them and then she can hang them on her tree, so they're not going to waste. Once these little trees were removed, I took my garland outside and I placed it into a box so the garland could hover. I'm going to paint it with some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I painted the beads thoroughly in the spray paint. Once it was completely coated in the paint, I let it dry for 30 minutes. Then I twisted the garland so the bare side was facing up, and I painted it again in a thorough coat of the spray paint. Once it was completely coated, I let it dry for 2 hours. I love the way that this white garland looks now. Not only is it going to be perfect for Christmas time, but I will be able to use it for so many holidays and decorating for the rest of the year. So I just simply draped this garland over the top of the existing garland, and I love the natural element that it adds. Once I had my ornaments hung, I looked at it and I thought, you know, it could really use some of that champagne gold ribbon that we added to our orchid arrangement. So I added that to the garland. I would suggest that if you're gonna add ribbon to it, do it before you add the ornaments, but you know, this was a design inspiration that came after the fact that the ornaments were on, so you just have to make do. But I added the ribbon to the garland and I think it's a beautiful addition. Isn't this garland a perfect addition to this mirror? It really highlights the shape of the mirror. It's not overwhelming and it doesn't block the mirror. So if you have a piece of art or a mirror that you want to decorate for Christmas, creating a garland and hanging it from the perimeter is a beautiful way to do that. These pieces were so easy to make and I absolutely love the way that they look. These pieces are a little more unique than I traditionally tend to decorate with, so I'm really excited to incorporate this into my holiday decor. I hope you enjoyed the pieces that we made today and I hope you got some inspiration. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for watching.